The hunters become the hunted. The mining facility on Kepler-4 for 2b had been a symbol of hope for 3 generations. Built into the crystalline cliffs of the planet's northern continent, it represented everything the Galactic Coalition stood for: cooperation, progress, and the peaceful expansion of civilization into the stars. The facility's transparent aluminum domes gleamed like jewels against the amber sky, housing over 12,000 beings from 17 different species, all working together to extract the rare minerals that powered faster-than-light travel. Zara. Millet pressed her four-fingered hand against the observation window of Level 7. Watching the twin suns of the Kepler system paint the horizon in shades of gold and crimson. Her scaled skin, typical of her Corinthian heritage, shimmered with the natural bioluminescence that indicated contentment. She had been born here, raised here, and planned to die here peacefully decades from now. The colony was her world, and she loved every meter of it. The first explosion shattered more than just the reinforced glass. It shattered the illusion of safety that had protected them for so long. Zara was thrown backward as the observation deck buckled. Emergency lights, casting everything in hellish red. Through the smoke and debris, she could see ships descending from the upper atmosphere, their hulls black as the void between stars. Each vessel was shaped like a predator's tooth, curved and menacing, with energy weapons that glowed like hungry eyes. The Vorthok had come to Kepler-4 to be. Zara's blood turned to ice. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories of the Vorthok Syndicate. They were the apex predators of known space, a species that had evolved not just to hunt, but to enjoy the hunt. Their society was built on the systematic exploitation of weaker species, and they had turned warfare into an art form that emphasized cruelty as much as efficiency. The Vorthok didn't just conquer worlds, they savored them. They preferred to let their victims know exactly what was coming, to taste the fear before they struck. Their ships would appear in systems like harbingers of doom, broadcasting warnings that gave just enough time for panic to set in before the slaughter began. Another explosion rocked the facility, and Zara could hear the screams of her co-workers echoing through the corridors. The artificial gravity flickered, sending loose debris floating in chaotic patterns. She pulled herself toward the emergency panel, her engineering training taking over even as her mind reeled with terror. The facility's defense systems had been designed to repel pirates and asteroid impacts, not a full-scale military assault. As she accessed the security feeds, Zara watched in horror as Vorthok shock troops poured through the breached outer holes. They moved with predatory grace, their exoskeletons gleaming with integrated weapons systems. Each warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms that ended in claws capable of rending steel. But it was their eyes that made Zara's spine chill. The Vorthok had evolved from pack hunters, and their eyes reflected that heritage. They glowed with an inner light that seemed to burn with anticipation. And when they looked at their prey, it was with the patience of creatures who knew that fear made the kill sweeter. Zara forced herself to think through the panic. The main evacuation routes were compromised, and the emergency shuttles were being picked off by Vorthok interceptors before they could reach orbit. But there was another option, one that had been sealed away in the facility's deepest levels for over a century. She made her way through the collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris and the occasional Vorthok patrol. The deeper levels of the facility were older, built when the colony was first established. Down here, in the archives that most people had forgotten existed, lay the remnants of the colony's original construction, the Human Colonial Archive. Zara had studied the old records as part of her historical engineering certification. Humans had been among the founding species of the Galactic Coalition, but they had withdrawn from galactic affairs over 2 centuries ago. The official records called it the Great Isolation, a mysterious event that had seen humanity seal their borders and cut all contact with the outside galaxy. Some said they had destroyed themselves in civil war. Others claimed they had transcended physical existence. The most popular theory was that they had simply grown tired of galactic politics and decided to focus on their own development. But the truth was that nobody knew what had happened to humanity. What Zara did know was that the human engineers who had helped build this facility had left behind more than just construction records. They had left behind an emergency beacon, a quantum transmitter, designed to punch through hyperspace and reach human space in case of extreme crisis. The archive room was a tomb of forgotten technology, dust-covered banks of obsolete computers, and the air recycling system had been offline for decades. But in the center of the room, sealed behind a transparent aluminum case, was a device that looked deceptively simple. It was a sphere of polished metal, no larger than her fist, with a single activation switch. Zara's hands trembled as she read the warning labels. The text was an old galactic standard, the universal language that had been used before the Coalition adopted the current system. The message was clear: emergency use only. Activation will result in immediate human response. Warning: human military doctrine may not align with current galactic law. Outside, the sounds of combat were growing closer. Zara could hear the distinctive hum of Vorthok energy weapons and the screams of colonists being herded like cattle. The facility's automated systems were announcing casualty reports in a calm, mechanical voice that made the horror somehow worse. She thought about her family, her friends, the thousands of innocent beings who called this place home. Weren't just killing them, they were enjoying it. She had seen the recordings from other worlds that had fallen to the Syndicate. The survivors were taken as slaves, forced to work in the Vorthak's industrial complexes until they died of exhaustion or were consumed as food. Zara's scaled hand hovered over the activation switch. Once she pressed it, there would be no going back. The beacon would send a message across the galaxy to a species that had chosen to isolate itself from the rest of known space. A species that might not even exist anymore. But what choice did she have? The activation switch clicked with a sound like breaking glass. The sphere began to glow with an inner light that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Zara felt a strange tingling in the air, as if reality itself was being stretched thin. The quantum transmitter was tearing a hole through hyperspace, sending its signal across distances that would take conventional ships years to traverse. The message was simple and desperate. Colony under attack. Vorthok Syndicate. Coordinates attached. Please help. Light years away. In the depths of space that had been forbidden to galactic civilization for over 2 centuries, something stirred. The UES Retribution hung in the void like a dark cathedral, its hull absorbing the light of distant stars. The ship was beautiful in the way that predators were beautiful. Every line and curve designed for maximum efficiency and lethality. Captain Marcus Chen stood on the bridge, watching the tactical displays with eyes that had seen too much war. His face was weathered by years of command, and his dark hair was streaked with premature grey. He had been born during the isolation, raised in a humanity that had turned inward after the devastating conflicts of the previous century. Asterisk. The quantum beacon's signal reached the Retribution's sensors like a ghost from the past. The bridge crew fell silent as they processed the implications. Contact with the outside galaxy had been forbidden for 200 years, ever since the Treaty of Titan had sealed Earth's borders. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, "the ship's communications officer, we're receiving a priority transmission from the outer detection grid. It's a quantum beacon, human design, but the signal is coming from outside our territory." Marcus studied the data flowing across his screens. Kepler 442b was a mining colony in Coalition space, over 300 light-years from the nearest human outpost. The colonists were facing annihilation at the hands of the Vorthok Syndicate, and somehow they had managed to activate a beacon that should have been destroyed decades ago. "Analysis of the attackers," Marcus asked. "Vorthok Syndicate, sir. Full battle group. They've got the colony surrounded and are conducting what appears to be a systematic harvesting operation." Marcus felt a familiar cold anger settling in his chest. The Vorthok were exactly the kind of predators that had driven humanity to withdraw from galactic affairs. They represented everything that was wrong with the galaxy, a species that had turned cruelty into a virtue and weakness into a crime. "Sir," said Commander Park, "our orders are clear. We're not supposed to interfere with events outside human space. The Isolation Treaty specifically prohibits—" "I know what the treaty says," Marcus interrupted. "But that beacon was activated by people who are about to die. People who are counting on us to remember what we used to stand for." He turned to his tactical officer. "How long to reach the Kepler system?" 17 hours at maximum hyperspace. "Velocity, sir." "But sir, we're talking about engaging a full Vorthok battle group. The political implications are irrelevant," Marcus said quietly. "We're going to remind the galaxy why humanity chose to isolate itself. And we're going to remind the Vorthok why they used to fear us." Back on Kepler 442b, Zara huddled in the maintenance shaft, where she had taken refuge after activating the beacon. The facility was falling apart around her, and she could hear the methodical approach of Vorthok hunting parties as they cleared each level. They weren't in a hurry. They never were. The Vorthok understood that terror was a weapon as effective as any plasma cannon. She clutched the beacon transmitter to her chest, willing it to work. The device had gone dark after sending its signal, leaving her with no way to know if anyone had received the message. For all she knew, she had just sent a plea for help into the empty void. The sound of approaching footsteps made her freeze, heavy, deliberate, accompanied by the soft clicking of claws on metal. A Vorthok patrol was methodically searching the maintenance areas, and they were getting closer. Zara closed her eyes and tried to prepare herself for what was coming. The Vorthok were skilled hunters, but they were also cruel. They would keep her alive long enough to extract every bit of information she possessed, and then they would decide whether she was worth keeping as a slave or consuming as food. But as the footsteps drew nearer, something changed. The artificial gravity fluctuated, and the facility's remaining lights flickered in a pattern that seemed almost rhythmic. Through the maintenance shafts, ventilation grates, Zara could see the Vorthok warriors had stopped moving. They were looking around with expressions of confusion and growing alarm. Something was happening in the space above Kepler 442b, something that was making the galaxy's most feared. Predators pause in their hunt. The UES Retribution dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system like a shadow materializing from a nightmare. The ship's stealth systems were generations ahead of anything the Vorthok possessed, and its approach went undetected until it was already too late. Marcus Chen stood on his bridge, watching the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. The Vorthok fleet was positioned exactly as he had expected, with their heavy cruisers maintaining orbital bombardment positions while their smaller vessels conducted ground operations. It was a textbook predator formation designed to maximize terror while minimizing risk. It was also a formation that left them vulnerable to exactly the kind of attack that human naval doctrine had been designed to deliver. "All stations report ready, sir," said his tactical officer. "Weapons systems are hot, stealth field is stable, and the crew is at battle stations." Marcus nodded. After 2 centuries of isolation, humanity was about to remind the galaxy why they had once been considered the most dangerous species in known space. The Vorthok had grown complacent, accustomed to hunting prey that couldn't fight back effectively. They were about to learn the difference between predators and apex predators. "Signaled the fleet," Marcus said quietly. "Operation Righteous Fury is now active. Let's show them what happens when you hunt the innocent." The darkness of space erupted in fire and light as the human fleet decloaked and opened fire. The galaxy's predators were about to become prey, and the hunt was about to begin in earnest. Asterisk, when predators meet apex, the first salvo from the human fleet tore through the Vorthok formation like lightning through a storm cloud. The UES main guns spoke with voices of thunder, their particle beams carving through the predator ship's hulls with surgical precision. What had been a methodical harvesting operation moments before became chaos as the hunters found themselves under attack by something they had never encountered. Captain Marcus Chen watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The Vorthok fleet was reacting exactly as human intelligence had predicted they would. Their formation scattered as individual commanders tried to protect their own ships, abandoning the coordinated approach that had made them so effective against weaker opponents. "Target their flagship," Marcus ordered. "I want to have a conversation with their pack leader." The Vorthok flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Bloodclaim, was a testament to their species' philosophy of warfare. Its hull was adorned with trophies from conquered worlds, and its weapon systems were designed as much to terrorize as to destroy. But it had never faced weapons like those carried by the human fleet. The Retribution's torpedo struck the Bloodclaim's shields with devastating effect. The Vorthok ship's energy barriers, designed to deflect conventional weapons, overloaded and collapsed under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled across the dreadnoughts. Hull as human weapons found their targets with uncanny accuracy. On the bridge of the Bloodclaim, pack leader Thrax felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. His forearms worked frantically at the command console as he tried to understand what was happening. The attackers had appeared from nowhere, their ships invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Their weapons technology was beyond anything in the Vorthok database, and their tactics were ruthlessly efficient. "Report," Thrax snarled, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. "Unknown vessels, pack leader," his tactical officer replied, her voice trembling with barely controlled panic. "They appear to be using stealth technology we cannot detect. Their weapon signatures are not in any known database." Thrax studied the tactical display, his predator's instincts screaming warnings. The attackers were not behaving like any species he had encountered. They were not trying to drive the Vorthok away or force a surrender. They were hunting, and they were doing it with a skill that made even the galaxy's apex predators look like amateurs. "Attempt to communicate," he ordered. "I want to know what we're dealing with." The response came not through conventional channels, but as a direct broadcast to every ship in the system. The voice was calm, measured, and somehow more terrifying than any battle cry. Vorthok vessels, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution. You are attacking a civilian colony under the protection of the Galactic Coalition. You will cease your operations immediately and withdraw from this system. Thrax felt his blood chill. Earth, the ghost world that had vanished from galactic affairs 2 centuries ago. The species that had been so feared that their withdrawal had been met with relief rather than concern. Human, he whispered, the word carrying implications that made his pack instincts scream warnings. Down on Kepler 4 for to be, Zara Millet watched through the maintenance shaft's viewing port as the sky above the colony erupted in light. The fighters that had been strafing the facility were being picked off by weapons fire that seemed to come from empty space. She could see the alien warriors in the corridors below her stopping their advance, their confidence shaken by the sudden change in circumstances. The facility's communication system crackled to life, broadcasting a message that made Zara's heart leap with desperate hope. Survivors of Kepler 4 for 2B colony, this is the United Earth ship Retribution. We have received your distress call and are currently engaging the hostile forces. Please remain in secure locations until we can establish a safe perimeter for evacuation. Zara pressed her scaled hand against the transmitter she still carried, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. The humans had come. The ghost species had broken their isolation to answer a plea for help from strangers. Asterisk. But as the battle raged above, the Vorthok forces on the ground were adapting. These were not ordinary soldiers, but elite hunters who had survived countless conflicts. They began to regroup, their pack instincts overriding their individual fear. As they prepared to take hostages, pack leader Thrax's response to the human ultimatum was predictable. The Vorthok did not negotiate with prey, no matter how dangerous that prey might be. His reply was broadcast on all frequencies, meant to be heard by every being in the system. Human vessel, I am pack leader Thrax of the Blood Claim. Your species abandoned this galaxy long ago. You have no authority here. These colonists are our lawful prey, taken according to the ancient rites of conquest. Withdraw, or we will add human bones to our trophy collection. The silence that followed was more ominous than any threat. When Marcus Chen's voice returned, it carried a quality that made even hardened Vorthok warriors pause in their activities. Pack leader Thrax, let me explain something to you. Humanity didn't withdraw from galactic affairs because we were weak. We withdrew because we were tired of having to clean up the messes left by species like yours. But you've just made a critical error in judgment. You've reminded us why we used to take an active interest in galactic affairs. The human fleet's formation shifted, and suddenly the Vorthok found themselves surrounded. Ships that had been invisible moments before, decloaked in perfect formation. Their weapons trained on the predator vessels with mathematical precision. You see, Marcus continued, humans are persistence hunters. We don't just kill our prey. We track it, we study it, we learn its weaknesses and exploit them. And for the past 2 centuries, we've been watching species like yours turn the galaxy into a hunting ground for the strong against the weak. The Blood Claim's shields flared as human weapons found their mark again. But this time, the attack was surgical, designed to disable rather than destroy. The Vorthok flagship's engines went offline, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. We've been patient, Marcus said, his voice growing colder. We've been content to let the galaxy make its own mistakes. But you've just attacked civilians who were under our protection, whether they knew it or not. And that, pack leader, is something we cannot tolerate. The human assault was unlike anything the Vorthok had ever experienced. Their opponents fought with a combination of advanced technology and tactical brilliance that turned the battle into a masterclass in naval warfare. The Vorthok ships, designed to terrorize and overwhelm weaker opponents, found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered at every turn. But it was the psychological warfare that proved most effective. The humans' broadcast intercepted Vorthok communications, showing the fear and confusion spreading through the predator ranks. They transmitted tactical analyses that revealed exactly how they were dismantling the Vorthok formation, turning the hunters' own pack instincts against them. On the surface of Kepler 44 to B, the situation was changing rapidly. Zara watched as human marines materialized throughout the facility, their powered armor making them seem like armored titans. They moved with deadly efficiency, their weapons systems integrated with tactical computers that allowed them to engage multiple targets simultaneously. The Vorthok hunters, accustomed to facing terrified civilians, found themselves confronting soldiers who had been trained by a species that had perfected warfare through millennia of conflict. The humans didn't just fight, they dominated. Every movement was calculated, every shot precise, every tactical decision designed to maximize effect while minimizing risk. Zara saw one human marine single-handedly clear an entire corridor of Vorthok warriors, the soldiers' armor absorbed, their energy weapons without apparent effect, while his return fire struck with devastating accuracy. But what impressed her most was the way he moved, with the fluid grace of a predator that had evolved beyond the need for cruelty. The Marine paused when he saw her hiding in the maintenance shaft, his helmet's sensors scanning her vital signs. When he spoke, his voice was filtered through the armor's communication system, but she could hear the genuine concern beneath the electronic distortion. Civilian located, level 7 maintenance, medical assistance required. He turned to address her directly. You're safe now. We're here to get you out. As human forces secured the facility, the space battle above reached its climax. The fleet, trapped between the human formation and the planet's gravity well, made one last desperate attempt to break free. Pack leader Thrax ordered his remaining ships to concentrate their fire on the human flagship, hoping to decapitate the enemy formation. It was exactly what Marcus Chen had been waiting for. The retribution's true capabilities were revealed as the ship's defensive systems came online. Point defense lasers intercepted incoming missiles with surgical precision, while the ship's shields absorbed energy weapons fire without visible effect. The human flagship wasn't just better armed than its opponents, it was operating on a completely different technological level. Marcus activated the ship's main weapon, a particle beam array that had been designed for use against planetary targets. When it fired, the beam carved through the blood claim's hull like a sword through paper, destroying the ship's command structure and leaving it a drifting wreck. The remaining Vorthok ships, seeing their pack leader's flagship destroyed, broke formation and attempted to flee. But the human fleet was ready for them. Faster-than-light interdiction fields activated, trapping the predator ships in normal space, where they could be hunted down one by one. The battle that followed was less a fight than an execution. The Vorthok, accustomed to hunting weaker opponents, found themselves facing a species that had turned warfare into a science. Their ships were systematically disabled or destroyed, their crews captured or killed, their reputation as apex predators shattered in a single engagement, as the last Vorthok vessel was neutralized, Marcus Chen stood on his bridge and surveyed the battlefield. The colony was secure, the civilians were safe, and the galaxy's most feared predators had been reminded of their place in the cosmic hierarchy. But the victory came with a price. Humanity's isolation was over. The galaxy would know that humans had returned to galactic affairs, and that return would have consequences that rippled across known space. Marcus activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies, so that every species in the galaxy would hear his words. This is Captain Marcus Chen of the United Earth ship Retribution, speaking for the United Earth government. For 2 centuries, humanity has maintained a policy of isolation from galactic affairs. Today, that policy has been modified. Any species that targets civilians, that preys upon the weak, that turns conquest into sport, will find themselves facing the full might of human military power. He paused, letting the implications sink in. We are not returning to the galaxy as conquerors, we are returning as protectors. The age of predators hunting the innocent is over. The age of human oversight has begun. In the weeks that followed, the rescued colonists were relocated to safer systems under human protection. Zara Millet found herself serving as a liaison between the human authorities and the Galactic Coalition, helping to establish the protocols that would govern humanity's new role in galactic affairs. She often thought about the moment when she had activated the quantum beacon, not knowing if anyone would answer. The humans had not only answered, they had done so with a force and determination that had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The Vorthok Syndicate, their reputation shattered and their fleet destroyed, withdrew to their home. Systems to lick their wounds and reconsider their place in a galaxy that suddenly seemed much more dangerous. Other predatory species took note, and many began to modify their own aggressive policies. But perhaps most importantly, the weaker species of the galaxy found themselves with a protector that had the power to enforce its will. Humanity had returned to galactic affairs, not as participants, but as guardians. And the galaxy would never be the same. As Zara stood on the observation deck of the human starbase that had been constructed in the Kepler system, she watched the ships of the human fleet, patrolling the trade routes. They were a reminder to all who saw them that the age of predators was over. The galaxy had learned a harsh lesson. When you hunt the innocent, you might just find yourself facing something that hunts you back. And humanity, after 2 centuries of isolation, had proven that they were still the apex predators of known space. The weak were no longer alone. The strong were no longer unchallenged. And the galaxy was learning to fear the dark ships that moved through the void, carrying the promise of protection for the innocent and the threat of annihilation for those who would prey upon them. The humans had returned, and they had brought justice with them. Asterisk.